Здравствуйте, my name is Tsar Andrei, and welcome to part 2 of the Mega campaign. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, which was EU4, I'd recommend you check out that video first. I'm going to try and put that in the description. And in that video I started as Russia and we colonized a couple interesting places, wiped out Sweden for good, more than Peter the Great ever could. And if you want to know any more, you should watch that video. So anyway, this is Victoria 2, a game that I have literally never played before this run through, except for like trying to figure out how it worked a little bit. So I had literally no idea what I was doing and had no resources except for a couple Steam guides and what I remembered some YouTubers that I'd watched. And remembering what I'd seen from some YouTubers playing the game. So I went in basically blind, had no idea what I was doing, and, well, things took some interesting turns. One of the first things that I ended up noticing while playing this game is that the game is, and I guess this isn't surprising, brutally unfair to the lower class. Because, you derive almost all of your taxes from them, and it's kind of suggested to just tax them the most. So they have no disposable income. I'm not going to get into social commentary, but it was a little funny. So, to make up for the fact that I was putting them likely into crippling poverty, I did spend money on education, and made my literacy rate go up about 1% after like 3 years. But that's cool. I like watching numbers tick up, and that's kind of the reason why I did that. And aside from that, as far as world events go, India became an independent country, which is something that I don't really think Victoria 2 is designed to handle, because for about 3/4 of the game they were incredibly ahead in industry and military and everything. Because I'm pretty sure their resources are meant to be strangled by the British or something like that. But no, actually they were just off doing their own thing. Of course China was complete chaos, and that only really continued throughout this. No one united Chinese power ever came. There was the China that bordered me in Manchuria, but they never did anything. And I'm pretty sure that the population of my part of Manchuria and the population of their part of Manchuria was not very similar, because I think I had about 10 times more people in my portion. Aside from that, the Spanish and French still own some of China, but it's not like they were ever able to do much with that. And then, for the first of many times throughout this campaign, I declared war on Germany. Well, Prussia, technically, and I beat the crap out of them for Eastern Poland. Now, I wasn't entirely familiar with how stuff worked, so I saw the war goal to take, whatever it was, Bialystok or something like that. And I figured, okay, well, if I take that, maybe it'll be like CK2, where, what I take is influenced by what I've sieged down. Or maybe it's like EU4, where my war score allows me more ability to take more things. Or maybe it's like Hearts of Iron 4, where I basically just annex the whole country, and whatever thing you make a claim on is just you get easier war score for that. No, and I guess I should have figured that, considering I just described 3 different systems for 3 different games, and this is the 4th different game. But I guess that didn't click, so what ended up happening was I got this bit of Eastern Poland, and then there's just this one province that the Germans own, just completely surrounded by my stuff, and that really bothered me. I liked the news at first, when it was still manageable to read some of it. And keep in mind, the reason this video is late is because of how long it took me to record this game, which partially was due to me not knowing what I was doing. But stuff like the news, didn't really have time to read it, but I did like it. And aside from that, the other thing is that I was trying to battle emigration the whole time, people leaving the country. And in the end, the only reason that my country ended up being a kind of nice place is because I was just doing that to keep people from leaving, because I wanted a massive population to fight World War II, because I knew that I wasn't going to have any luck in diplomacy, which was for the most part true, though I did start basically influencing a bunch of countries and bringing them into my sphere, but most of the good ones had left by the time I got into Boy 4. I looked around at my great colonial empire and was glad to still own Hawaii, which would actually, by the end of the game, become a massive population center with 600,000 people living in it, which I don't know how many people live in Hawaii now, but for that many people living in Hawaii in like the 1900s, I'm pretty sure that it's at least comparable to how many people live there now. Aside from that, I wanted to take Vladivostok, which of course was not Vladivostok, but the Japanese owned it, and that was unacceptable heresy. Fortunately for me, the Japanese didn't exactly get a good role coming into Victoria 2, as their sprites suggested, as they were still samurai. I'm pretty sure they got to Miltech 32 in EU4, but I guess Victoria 2 had other plans because my army of pretty much exactly even numbers slaughtered them with like maybe 1,000 casualties. Panama ended up having 25% of a Russian population at one point in time after some mass exodus because, well, I didn't know how economics worked for the first half of this game. So I speared them because why not? And this was about the time when I started doing the nice things to make people stop leaving, like outlawing slavery, which I didn't even know that we had that. And the only slaves were like maybe 9,000 people in Uzbekistan, but hey, it didn't serve me any purpose, so why not get rid of it, especially because it got people to stop leaving, and that made me realize being a nice person keeps more people in your country. Who would have thought? Aside from that, it was the second Russo-Prusso War, and I got that enclave, and that was one state, except I'm pretty sure it was like twice as deadly as the first war that I fought. European wars, you gotta love them. One thing that I did notice about my colonial territory is that I didn't own a quarter of New Guinea. I don't know why, but I imagine it's because of the way that EU4 transferred handling colonial territories, or at least states, over to Vic 2. Because in EU4 I owned all of New Guinea, but in Vic 2 there was an open slot. And unfortunately, I couldn't take that open slot before the slimy Dutch got their wooden shoe soles in there, and they took part of that. Then we fought the Ottomans for Ukraine, which they still owned a little bit of, and I figured, hey, that's Ukrainian, they're an accepted culture, let's go take that. I also want to beat up the Ottomans. Who doesn't like to do a little bit of that? So that was a good war. They were a lot worse than the Germans, surprisingly. And aside from that, I fought the Prussians a third time. Keep track, it's going to be a lot of times by the end for Western Poland, I believe it was this time. And they'd gotten stronger, and I hadn't been paying attention, so I almost lost that war, but I just kind of mobilized my massive population. And then comes almost the worst thing that I've colonized this entire mega campaign, which is Russian Western Australia. Not even the nice part in the southwest of Australia. No, I mean like all of the worthless desert parts that are considered a wasteland in EU4. I took all of that. The Spanish had the north, I think, and then the Portuguese had the east. So basically all the nice parts were colonized, so I took all the shit parts. And I'm going to give you a spoiler, by the end of the game, my shit parts were like 4 times more populated than the entire rest of Australia, and I have no idea why. But free population, and that'll make it easier for me to conquer the rest of Australia. Yes, my Pacific Empire, the Russian Pacific Empire. Oh, that's weird to say. Then I slapped the Turks a bit more, because you kind of have to. I don't even remember why I fought them this time. It might have been a containment war or something. I really have no idea. I just know that they didn't stand a chance. And then I looked over at the North Americas, which was an interesting time. California was an independent country. There was a bunch of other countries like Colombia, which wasn't Colombia down in South America, it was Colombia up in like northwest Canada. And a ton of people lived there, but it never did anything. And then Alaska was also independent, and it did a whole lot of things. Like turn democratic, and then turn communist, and then turn fascist. And I believe that they're still fascist, by the way, for you. Go figure. But the big stomper was the Americans, who never fought an American Civil War because they were in a kingdom, which, you know, who the fuck knows why that was the case. I think it was because they got released by the UK, and then they broke free somehow. And After that, they just kind of did their own thing, being a kingdom and stuff, which was really, really strange. Aside from that, I ended up looking, I liked watching the stats of like what all my people were doing, and 5% of my population ended up being soldiers. I'm pretty sure by the end of the game it was more like 7%. So, yeah, I drafted a couple people, you know, got a person in the military there, person in the military there. But I had a massive population, so I could handle it, and that's the only reason that I was able to ignore diplomacy. I'd been spearing Greenland because at some point I started influencing them, probably for the meme. And I looked, and half their population was no culture. The other half was Canadian, and only like 400 people lived on the entire area, so that was literally worthless. That was such a great use of my time to go to the trouble of making Greenland a sphere where they just have so many resources and stuff and things. I fought the Germans once again. This is the one that I thought was going to have to be my Great War, because no Great War was happening. So I just declared war on it because I wanted a big war with all that cool, you know, early 1900s stuff. And I realized that all that it really did was just kill a whole lot of people. And I think maybe this is the time that I took that piece of West Poland, but I honestly have no idea what was accomplished in this war. I just know that like tons of people died. It actually only lasted 2 years. I don't imagine how you could have a big war at the end last 4 years in this game, because already so many people died. I don't understand how anybody would have a functioning army by 4 years into a war. And then the Russian Civil War happened, except it wasn't really a civil war, it was a pub stomp, because I just directly sent all of my guys and slaughtered the communists. That was kind of disappointing. But I also didn't want to just do a generic Soviet Union game. I wanted to keep with the Tsar. Aside from that, I fought the actual Great War against the Germans, which was also kind of short at 2 years, so I just kind of stuck the two together. So there was 4 years of big scary war against the Germans, except this one was in the 20s, so there was airplanes and tanks and stuff. And holy shit, did a lot of people die. I'm also pretty sure it was just me and France and Denmark versus the world, I guess. So I ended up mobilizing all the people, and for all the democratic rights I'd given them, I'm pretty sure the one that was most useful to me was the democratic right to die in a war. So they did a whole lot of that, but I still won, so I was okay with it. The actual Great War was fought to free Burkina Faso. I know where Burkina Faso is, but when it was released, it was smaller than I remember it having been in Millennium Dawn and Hoi 4. Yeah, that was actually the war where a lot of people died there. You see, I fought the Germans so many times that I actually got confused on which wars I fought against the Germans. I'm pretty sure that I killed more Germans throughout playing Victoria 2 than like all of World War II did, so I don't know, man. Then we had some pretty weird population density when I was looking around at that towards the end of the game. Because St. Petersburg was my capital and had like nobody living in it. Moscow had all the industry and no people living in it. And then it was just like South Central Russia that had like, I don't know, like 100 million people living in it or something. And then there was the like 700,000 people in Hawaii. So I don't know how population density works. And then I also noticed that Russians were culturally replacing the Swedes, the Kazakhs, the Lithuanians, the Ukrainians, really everybody. Which I don't know why that was happening, but then I looked around and I don't know if I got footage of it, but the British replaced most of the Irish. And Hungary is now ethnically Turkish, which means that I'm somehow going to have to make that border look good in Hoi 4. So, after that the game ended pretty quickly, and that was finished recording 2 days ago, and I was really lazy yesterday, and that's why you're seeing this video today. Sorry that it was late. This was actually fun. I don't think I'm going to have as much issue doing mega campaigns because I enjoyed playing Victoria 2, and it probably won't be as late because I know how to play. Sort of. So anyway, next week we should see Hoi 4. Hopefully it'll be kind of on time, Friday or Saturday. I really can't guarantee because, as I've said before, this is a new schedule for me. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next video. До свидания.